The moment you stop needing people to approve of you, some of them will suddenly become uncomfortable. Not because you became arrogant. Not because you stopped caring. But because the version of you they understood was built around permission. Permission to speak. Permission to leave. Permission to disagree. Permission to feel valuable. And when you stop asking for that permission, the entire relationship changes. You may not notice it at first. It starts in small moments. You send a message and do not stare at your phone waiting for a reply. You share an opinion without immediately explaining yourself. You walk into a room without wondering whether everyone likes you. Nothing dramatic happens. But inside you, something becomes quiet. Those quiet changes everything. Most people do not consciously decide to seek validation. It develops slowly. Maybe you learned that being agreeable kept the peace. Maybe compliments made you feel safe. Maybe attention from someone attractive made you feel important. Maybe rejection once hurt so deeply that you started shaping yourself around avoiding it. So, you became more careful. You analyzed every conversation. You softened every opinion. You tried to say the perfect thing. And without realizing it, you placed your confidence in other people's hands. This is where attraction often becomes complicated. A man may believe he is being kind, patient, or emotionally available. But beneath those good qualities, there may be an invisible question. Do you like me now? He texts again because the silence feels personal. He agrees with something he does not believe because disagreement feels risky. He gives too much too early because he hopes effort will guarantee affection. He is not simply connecting. He is performing for reassurance. And people can often feel the difference. Healthy interest feels open. Validation seeking feels heavy. Healthy interest says, I enjoy you. Validation seeking says, I need you to prove I am enough. That pressure may never be spoken. But it changes the emotional atmosphere. Imagine a man on a date with someone he genuinely likes. She tells him she loves spontaneous travel. He hates unplanned trips. But instead of saying that, he smiles and says, me too. Later, she mentions a political opinion he disagrees with. Again, he nods. She chooses the restaurant. He chooses her choice. She asks what he wants. He says, anything is fine. He believes he is making everything easy. But she leaves the date feeling like she met a mirror. Not a person. There was no tension. No truth. No emotional shape. He was so focused on being accepted that he disappeared from the conversation. That is the hidden cost of seeking validation. You may gain temporary approval while losing your identity. And the strangest part is that people often respect you less for the very behavior you use to earn their approval. Not because kindness is weak. Kindness with self-respect is powerful. But kindness driven by fear feels different. One comes from choice. The other comes from emotional dependency. This is why saying no can sometimes increase respect. This is why calm disagreement can create more attraction than constant agreement. This is why boundaries reveal more confidence than exaggerated charm. A boundary quietly communicates something important. I value this connection, but I will not abandon myself to keep it. That message is powerful because it removes desperation. You are no longer trying to control how someone sees you. You are simply showing them who you are. Then something unexpected happens. You begin to see people more clearly. When you crave approval, you do not evaluate others honestly. You ask whether they want you. You do not ask whether they treat you well. You ask whether they replied. You do not ask whether their communication is consistent. You ask how to impress them. You do not ask whether your values actually match. Validation seeking turns every interaction into an audition. And during an audition, you are too busy performing to judge the opportunity. The moment you stop auditioning, you notice things you previously ignored. The mixed signals. The one-sided effort. The disrespect hidden inside jokes. The affection that only appears when you pull away. The person who likes your attention more than they like you. That realization can hurt. But it is a clean kind of pain. Because disappointment is easier to heal than self-betrayal. Some people will pull closer when you stop chasing. Others will disappear. Both reactions give you information. The people who valued your honesty may respect you more. The people who benefited from your insecurity may resist the change. They may say you are different. They may call you distant. They may accuse you of having an attitude. Sometimes they are genuinely confused. Sometimes they simply miss the version of you who never challenged them. This is where many people lose their progress. They feel the tension. They fear being misunderstood. So, they return to overexplaining. They start apologizing for boundaries. They offer reassurance they were never asked to give. They shrink again just to restore familiarity. But growth often feels like conflict before it feels like freedom. Because the people around you must adjust to meeting the real you. And so must you. Stopping validation seeking does not mean becoming cold. It does not mean ignoring messages to appear powerful. It does not mean pretending you do not care. That is still validation seeking. It is simply wearing a different costume. When you act unavailable just to make someone chase you, their reaction still controls you. When you hide your feelings because you fear looking weak, fear still controls you. When you post something hoping one specific person sees it, their attention still controls you. Real detachment is quieter. You do not need to prove you are detached. You simply stop negotiating with your self-worth. You can care deeply without begging. You can express interest without forcing an outcome. You can be disappointed without becoming desperate. You can miss someone without returning to what harmed you. That is emotional maturity. And emotionally mature people are often attractive for one simple reason. They create emotional safety. You know where they stand. Their affection is not manipulation. Their boundaries are not punishment. Their silence is not a game. Their confidence does not require an audience. They are not constantly changing themselves to receive a certain response. This creates stability. And stability is rare. Think about the people who naturally command respect. They do not always speak the loudest. They do not dominate every room. They are not constantly reminding others of their value. There is simply a consistency in them. Their words and actions match. They do not become a completely different person around someone they find attractive. They do not betray their principles to avoid temporary discomfort. They remain emotionally present, even when the outcome is uncertain. That is what self-validation looks like in real life. It is not standing in front of a mirror repeating that you are perfect. It is trusting yourself enough to survive being disliked. It is knowing that rejection may hurt without allowing it to define you. It is realizing that losing someone is not always the same as losing something valuable. Sometimes what you lose is confusion. Sometimes you lose emotional instability. Sometimes you lose the exhausting responsibility of convincing someone to choose you. And suddenly, you have energy again. Energy to focus. Energy to build. Energy to enjoy your own life. Energy to enter relationships from desire instead of emptiness. That shift changes the way you communicate. You stop sending paragraphs to people committed to misunderstanding you. You stop chasing closure from someone who already showed you their character. You stop explaining basic standards. You stop treating inconsistency like mystery. You stop calling anxiety chemistry. That last one is difficult. Because many people confuse emotional uncertainty with attraction. The highs feel intense. The silence feels unbearable. The attention feels addictive. But intensity is not always intimacy. Sometimes it is simply the nervous system reacting to unpredictability. When you stop needing external validation, unstable connections lose some of their power. You no longer mistake breadcrumbs for commitment. You no longer feel honored by attention that lacks respect. You no longer become attached to potential while ignoring behavior. You become harder to manipulate. Not because you understand every psychological trick, but because you are no longer starving for approval. A starving person will accept almost anything. A fulfilled person can choose. And choice is the foundation of confidence. Not certainty. Choice. You cannot control whether someone stays. You cannot control whether they understand you. You cannot control whether they see your value. But you can choose not to chase someone who repeatedly overlooks it. You can choose not to abandon your standards because loneliness feels uncomfortable. You can choose honesty over performance. You can choose peace over proving a point. You can choose to leave the room with your dignity intact. At first, this may feel lonely. When you stop performing, some conversations become shorter. Some friendships feel different. Some romantic connections fade. But the emptiness is temporary. You are clearing space for relationships where you do not have to earn basic respect. Relationships where affection does not feel like a reward for good behavior. Relationships where disagreement does not threaten the entire connection. Relationships where you are wanted, not merely tolerated when convenient. And before those relationships arrive, something even more important happens. You begin to enjoy your own company. You make decisions faster. You recover from rejection more cleanly. You stop checking whether everyone understands your choices. You become less reactive. More grounded. More selective. And your presence changes. People feel that you are not asking them to complete you. You are inviting them to meet you. That is a completely different energy. One says, "Please choose me." The other says, "Let us see whether we choose each other." One creates pressure. The other creates possibility. This is not about becoming impossible to hurt. You will still care. You will still feel rejection. You will still question yourself sometimes. But your pain will no longer convince you to abandon your identity. You will feel the emotion without handing it control. And slowly, approval becomes something pleasant rather than necessary. Compliments feel good, but they do not define you. Attention feels good, but it does not own you. Love feels powerful, but it does not require self-erasure. That is when relationships become healthier. Because you are no longer asking another person to carry the weight of your worth. You can finally see them as a human being. Not a judge. Not a prize. Not a rescue mission. Just a person. A person you may connect with. A person you may love. A person you may eventually have to release. And you will survive all three. Because the most important relationship was never the one you were desperately trying to protect. It was the relationship you kept abandoning every time you needed someone else to approve of you.